When we look at people with loving attention, they're more likely to reciprocate by revealing more of themselves, enriching both parties in a mutually trusting relationship. The time honored stone monuments respond the same way to loving attention. If we look long and hard at one, focusing on it, it will gradually reveal its treasure.
Welcome to Read, Pray, Write, Spiritual Reading for Modern Life. I'm the host, Jean Kelly, and today I'm taping at the Wild Goose Festival in Harmony, North Carolina, and in particular, the Tell Me Your Story booth that's home of the Glen Mary Home Missioners. And in a moment, I'm going to welcome a creative of faith who is willing to share with us their wisdom found on the spiritual path, as well as a text that we will provide to our audience as a guided spiritual reading meditation. That'll be a distinct episode that you can find on our website, www.readpraywrite.com, as well as our YouTube channel, and linked in the bio of our social media channels on Instagram and Facebook. I'm gifted with the presence of Kenneth McIntosh, who, among many things, is a United Church of Christ minister, an inner spirituality leader and practitioner, and a Celtic spirituality expert. I'm going to give you that title because that's how I feel about it. And so Kenneth has agreed to offer a reading from his latest book that we will produce as a guided Lectio Divina or spiritual reading meditation that you'll find as a separate episode. And the book is Sacred Stones, Celtic Crosses, Their Timeless Call for Soul Growth, Community, and Connection with Nature.
Thank you, Gene. You're very kind. My editor said you could go as long as you want in a subtitle, so we got everything into that subtitle, and it's wonderful to be here with you today at the Goose.
Yeah, thanks.
So the book came, first of all, from my own experiences, and also from my observance of some things that go on in the world today. When I was a teenager, we bought a plaster cast of one of the ancient Irish high crosses with all this detailed portrayals of scripture characters and, all the lovely knotwork that you find on the Irish high crosses. And so I've had that object for much of my life, and it still hangs on a wall in my house. But it always fascinated me. I wasn't devout at that time in my life, but that meant a lot to me. It was ancient. It was part of my heritage. It was really unique, I guess would be my summary at that point.
I appreciated how you were able to just do such a deep dive with really well-researched scholarship, footnoted, and you kind of start off by just talking about their popularity, but maybe debunking some misconceptions at the same time. Celebrate, you walk that line very well. And I really appreciate that people are drawn to those crosses. I mean, you see them, people wearing them, and they don't always understand their history, their significance.
One of the things that saddens me is that I still identify as a Christ follower, despite there's a lot of toxicity in Christian movements in our time. And I think that a normal, simple cross can give people the wrong connotation. It can be we're here to judge you, or we're here to convert you, or it's almost a weaponized gut image that cross isn't necessarily tell people something good, but there is an affinity. People instinctively like, oh, that wheel cross, we're identify that with something we like. But yes, it is. If you just do a web search, like what is the meaning of, you're going to find all sorts of rubbish.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. You won't find accuracy. So if you're interested in learning more, and I learned so much about the history and just, I have actually reviewed this book. It'll be in U.S. Catholic Magazine in November, and I loved it. And the section that Kenneth just read, which will be a separate podcast episode that you can find on our website, readpraywrite.com, is my favorite aspect. I was telling him I went and did the prompts that he has at the end of each chapter. I was just that involved in it. And that was one thing I wanted to talk a little bit more about, is that, as you know, this is my goal is to introduce listeners to meditation and contemplation as an ancient practice that's still valid and relevant today, really, regardless of your denomination or belief, because I feel many people yearn for that going deeper. And one of the things I think you've suggested in that reading is that these stone, special crosses, maybe of any kind that maybe have family history, or these particular stone monuments can be a source of the text for spiritual reading. So wanted to talk a little bit more about that. Like, how would that work exactly? And
So I'm bringing up an idea that is not actually common for all the veneration of these crosses today. The idea that objects, sacred objects, can have an actual agency. And I would go maybe controversially say, I'm talking about beyond psychological,
Okay.
or beyond they make you feel warm because your grandfather was from Mall or whatever. But the people in the early Middle Ages believed that if things were crafted with prayer, that if they were done with the utmost loving artistry, if they were made to convey spiritual realities that were the firm faith of the artisan, that they acted, they touched lives, they had their own power to bless. Icons are what we usually think of as that, and there's
right.
varied estimation of icons, from Protestant dismissal altogether to some Catholic embrace to, I think, the strongest embrace in the churches of the East.
Right.
But but these early medieval artistic crosses would have been designed with that understanding that these are, another way to put it is that they're sacramental, not in
Okay.
the sense of baptism or last rites or anything like that, but or the Eucharist, but an object, a physical, tangible thing that God uses to convey God's compassion, God's grace to us. So they are sacramental, they are iconic. And there are a lot of examples of this. I go into the Dream of the Rood, which is an early medieval Anglo-Saxon uh, poem about the cross itself and how the cross speaks to us. And also, the most common example we have is St. Francis of Assisi. And if you go to Assisi, Italy, and go to Santa Chiara Church, you can see the huge cross, which curiously, it's a Byzantine cross. It's very ancient, and it dates more to the time of these ancient Irish and Scottish Pictish high crosses that I'm talking about. And of course, that cross famously spoke to Francis and said,
Right.
"Go rebuild my church," and
Yep.
turned his life around completely. And it is amazing. If you worship, you can worship at Santa Chiara and you hear the sisters sing and you look at this thing. It's right there. It's right in front of you. It's very powerful. But I'm taking very seriously that
Yep.
the crosses can very literally speak to our hearts. They can be a method of God communicating with us if we are open and receptive.
And I think that's very consistent with the universalist approach to, you know, faith and belief and that God in all things. One of the things that I helped make your argument so well in that is that you had a lot of times these kind of fictional scenarios of the creators of these crosses, and I think you did an amazing job of putting us into that scene to understand with what intent these were created and the meaning they had, and to these early cultures, that that's still with it.
Some of the crosses that have been most powerful in my life, curiously, they've not been the masterpieces. They haven't been the ones that are on every tour book and or on the tourist brochures. Some of them have been fairly commonplace, but the instance of the encounter itself.
The encounter, all those things coming together in the timing for when you needed it.
Yeah.
And that's where that's where I see as that God speaking to you at that moment, because you're open. It's an openness. It's a cultivation of that. sense of mystery, and that's what I think your book captures very, very well.
Thank you.
And I love it. And so I was curious. One of the things we're talking about a lot in this season is the connection between, having these kind of personal experiences. Maybe it's more of a communal experience. That might be it, or that might be the connection also to taking some sort of social action. How do you see in your own spiritual life, the inspiration that these stone crosses, the Celtic crosses, have had on you to connect with people, to connect with nature, to take action?
Well, a couple of separate things. There are several chapters about the connection to nature, and very much, the everything from very realistic leaf and patterns on these leaf and flower patterns on the crosses, fruits on the crosses, to the various animals and some of the earliest Hibernian depictions, zoomorphic depictions are on these crosses. It's really beautiful, impressive art. The crosses themselves speak of a nature connection. They obviously retell the Bible stories, but there's also an element where we have a quote from John Scotus Eriugena, who is one of the very few early Irish theologians. The Eriugena is the only person that actually says what that circle, and he says it represents, the sun, the universe, and everything imagined to be far away. So it's very inclusive. It is a symbol of the cosmic extent of God's compassion. And so to me, in terms of social action, in terms of even what is the faith, to me, this is a huge difference. I think that Christian crosses are sometimes seen as a stop sign. They're barring the way, because you have not done whatever it is you're supposed to do, said the right words or done the right ritual or joined the right community. You're out. and to me, this is, another thing you see is a hyper elongated arms of Christ stretching out, and where the blood prints the blood would be coming from his side. It's coming right down even on the Roman centurion. This is depicted, who's stabbing him. This is depicted in several of these. This idea that this is for enemy folk, active enemy folk who are hurting him. And the idea, it's an inclusive love, it's a gathering love,
Right.
it's an embracing love. It's not the cross barring the door, it's the hug waiting for you and drawing you in. Whoever you are, you are already in the door of God's inclusive love.
Oh, so nice. That I see that. And that to me is part of why they've been sustained, why they still even exist, is that I think people understood that and were drawn to that, the wheel or the circle as being more inviting. I thought at this point we could talk about whatever else you would like to add. Just kind of keep it open, keep it short, because Goose, you never know what's going to happen.
I am amazed at how these ancient crosses do encompass just about everything in life. And so, obviously the crucifixion of Christ, but that was understood very different by early medieval Christ followers from the way many people, especially evangelicals in America today, understand atonement, understand union with God. The Eastern connection fascinates me, Egypt connection and Byzantium with Ireland. I have a chapter called The Fury of the Vikings and the Blessing of Our Enemies. I was talking to someone at the Goose earlier about you go into genealogy and you're Scots, and then you find out that you've got all this Norse, Scandinavian blood.
To end this episode of Read, Pray, Write at the Wild Goose Festival 2025, I want to extend my deepest gratitude to our guest creative for their time, their wisdom, their generosity in helping us go deeper in our lives and joining me as a co-creator alongside the great creator. And I know you will support their work by following links that you'll find in the YouTube show notes, as well as on our website, www.readpraywrite.com, as well as on our social media channels, Facebook and Instagram. With that, I wish you all blessings.